Everybody wants to know how to become rich. Bookstores are filled with books promising the secrets of wealth. YouTube is flooded with videos claiming to reveal the habits of millionaires. And social media is constantly telling you what successful people do every single day. But what if we've been asking the wrong question all along? What if the fastest way to understand wealth is to understand what almost guarantees you'll never achieve it? Because success isn't only built by the right decisions. It's also protected by avoiding the wrong ones. The truth is, most people don't wake up one day and decide to stay broke. Instead, they unknowingly adopt habits, mindsets, and behaviors that quietly keep them stuck for years, even decades. These habits don't look dangerous. In fact, many of them seem completely normal. They're accepted by society. They're encouraged by friends. And because everyone around us is doing them, we rarely stop to question whether they're slowly costing us the life we want. Imagine trying to sail across the ocean with 7 small holes in your boat. Each hole, by itself, doesn't seem like a big problem. But over time, every single one lets in just enough water to stop you from ever reaching your destination. The same is true with wealth. It's often not one catastrophic mistake that holds people back. It's a collection of small habits repeated every single day. Today, we're going to explore 7 of those habits. Not because avoiding them will magically make you rich, but because they shape the way you think, the way you make decisions, the opportunities you recognize, and ultimately, the financial future you create. They reveal the hidden patterns that separate people who stay stuck from those who continue to grow. So, as you watch this video, don't ask yourself, how many of these habits do other people have? Ask yourself, which of these habits might be quietly holding me back? Because sometimes, the biggest obstacle standing between where you are and where you want to be isn't a lack of opportunity. It's a habit you've never questioned. Let's begin. Number 1. Listen to poor people. The first habit that almost guarantees you'll never become wealthy is listening to poor people. Now, before you get angry, let's clear something up. This isn't about looking down on people who don't have money. Poverty is not a measure of intelligence. Some of the smartest, kindest, and hardest working people in the world are struggling financially. And some wealthy people are dishonest, arrogant, and completely unworthy of admiration. So this isn't a conversation about someone's worth as a human being. It's a conversation about where you get your financial advice. Because here's a question. If you wanted to become an Olympic athlete, would you ask someone who has never played sports how to train? If you wanted to become a world-class surgeon, would you take medical advice from someone who has never stepped into a medical school? Of course not. So why do so many people seek financial advice from people who have never built wealth themselves? It's one of the strangest things we do. When it comes to money, everyone suddenly becomes an expert. Your friends have opinions. Your relatives have opinions. Your coworkers have opinions. Even strangers on the internet have opinions. But opinions are not the same as experience. And experience matters. Because people don't just give advice based on what they know. They give advice based on the life they've lived. Think about it. Someone who has spent their entire life living paycheck to paycheck will naturally see the world differently from someone who has built businesses, invested wisely, or created wealth over decades. Neither perspective is necessarily evil. They're simply different. One is shaped by scarcity. The other is shaped by possibility. And here's where most people get trapped. Imagine you tell your friends you're thinking about starting a business. Immediately, someone says, "Businesses fail. It's too risky. Just keep your job. What if it doesn't work?" Now, they might genuinely care about you. They may be trying to protect you. But here's the important question. Are they speaking from experience or from fear? Because fear has a funny way of disguising itself as wisdom. People often call it being realistic. But sometimes what we call realism is simply a collection of limiting beliefs we've inherited from people who never dared to try. Think about some of the biggest success stories in the world. Every entrepreneur, every inventor, every creator, at some point, they were told their idea wouldn't work, that they were dreaming too big, that they should settle for something safer. If they had listened to every pessimistic voice around them, many of the companies, products, and innovations we use today wouldn't exist. This doesn't mean you should ignore criticism. In fact, good criticism can save you from expensive mistakes. The key is learning who deserves to be listened to. If someone has achieved the kind of life you're trying to build, listen carefully. If someone has walked the path you're about to take, ask questions. Study them. Learn from their failures as much as their successes. But if someone has never done what you're trying to do, don't let their fear become your future. Because advice should always be filtered through one simple question. Has this person earned the right to give me guidance in this area? Not because they're rich, not because they're famous, but because they've actually produced the results you're hoping to achieve. The reality is, the voices you listen to today will shape the decisions you make tomorrow. And those decisions will shape the life you live 5, 10, or 20 years from now. So be careful whose opinions you allow to occupy space in your mind. Not every voice deserves equal weight. And sometimes, the biggest difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who builds an extraordinary life is simply choosing to learn from people who have already gone where they want to go. Number 2, read the tabloid newspapers. If you want to know how not to become rich, fill your mind with information that entertains you, but never equips you. Because one of the greatest investments you'll ever make isn't in stocks, real estate, or a business. It's in your mind. The information you consume every single day shapes the way you think, the conversations you have, the decisions you make, and ultimately, the direction your life takes. That's why the second habit on this list is so interesting. Read the tabloid newspapers. Now, this isn't really about newspapers. Today, tabloids have simply changed their form. They're on our phones. They're in our social media feeds. They're the endless stream of celebrity gossip, online drama, scandals, clickbait headlines, and viral controversies that demand our attention but add almost nothing to our lives. Think about it. How many people can tell you every detail about a celebrity's breakup, but can't explain the basics of investing? How many people spend hours following internet drama, yet have never read a single book on personal finance, business, leadership, or communication? We live in an age where information has never been more accessible, yet valuable knowledge has never been easier to ignore. The problem isn't that entertainment is bad. Everyone deserves to relax. Everyone needs moments to unwind. The problem begins when entertainment replaces education, when distraction becomes a lifestyle, when we spend far more time consuming content that makes us react than content that helps us grow. Here's an idea that's easy to overlook. Your mind works like a garden. Whatever you consistently plant is eventually what will grow. Plant gossip. You'll become more interested in other people's lives than improving your own. Plant fear. You'll begin to see obstacles everywhere. Plant knowledge, and you'll start noticing opportunities that other people completely miss. That's why many successful people are intentional about what they consume. They understand that attention is one of the most valuable assets they possess. Every article you read, every video you watch, every podcast you listen to, every account you follow, is shaping the person you're becoming. Imagine 2 people with exactly 1 free hour every evening. The first spends that hour watching celebrity scandals, online arguments, and sensational headlines. The second spends that same hour learning about investing, improving a professional skill, reading biographies of successful people, or studying how businesses are built. A week later, there's almost no difference between them. A month later, still very little. But give it 5 years, 10 years. The gap becomes enormous. Not because one person was smarter, but because one consistently invested in knowledge while the other consistently invested in distraction. That's how compounding works. Not just with money, but with information. Every useful thing you learn becomes another tool for solving problems, creating value, making better decisions, and recognizing opportunities that others overlook. And those small daily investments eventually produce extraordinary results. So ask yourself this. If someone looked at your YouTube history, your social media feed, the books on your shelf, the podcasts you listen to, would they conclude that you're preparing for the future you want? Or would they conclude that you're simply passing the time? Because your attention is constantly making an investment. The only question is whether it's investing in your growth or in your distraction. And that choice, repeated day after day, might determine far more about your financial future than you realize. Number 3, take other people's views or comments personally. If you want to know one of the fastest ways to stop yourself from becoming successful, take everything personally. Every criticism, every negative comment, every opinion, every joke, every rejection, every disagreement. Let all of it define how you see yourself. Because nothing kills ambition faster than constantly worrying about what other people think. The reality is, if you decide to do anything meaningful with your life, someone will have something to say about it. Start a business. Someone will tell you it's too risky. Apply for a better job. Someone will say you're aiming too high. Start creating content online. Someone will laugh. Invest your money. Someone will call you foolish. No matter what direction you choose, there will always be people who question it. The problem isn't that people have opinions. The problem is when you allow those opinions to become your reality. Think about it. How many dreams have been abandoned because someone was afraid of being criticized? How many businesses were never started because a friend laughed at the idea? How many books were never written? Videos never uploaded? Ideas never shared? Simply because someone couldn't bear the thought of being judged? It's a silent epidemic. People don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they're waiting for permission from people who were never qualified to give it. Here's something worth remembering. People often criticize what they don't understand. Sometimes they criticize what they secretly wish they had the courage to do. And sometimes, they're simply projecting their own fears onto you. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a diving board. You've prepared. You've practiced. You're ready to jump. Then someone standing safely on the ground shouts, "Don't do it. You'll get hurt." You have a choice. Listen to the person who never intended to jump, or trust the preparation you've put in. That's what life often feels like. The loudest opinions usually come from people who have the least at stake. Meanwhile, the people who are actually building remarkable lives are often too busy doing the work to spend their time criticizing everyone else. This doesn't mean you should ignore every opinion. Constructive feedback is one of the fastest ways to improve. If someone points out a genuine weakness in your plan, listen. If someone with experience offers advice, pay attention. If someone helps you see a blind spot, be grateful. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism. Constructive criticism helps you become better. Destructive criticism simply tries to make you smaller. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Because the truth is, the world rarely rewards people who seek universal approval. It rewards people who create value, who solve problems, who keep moving forward despite criticism. Every successful entrepreneur, every great artist, every inventor, every athlete has been doubted at some point. The difference is they refuse to let someone else's opinion become the ceiling for their potential. Here's a question that's worth asking yourself. How many decisions are you making today? Not because they're the best decisions, but because they protect you from other people's opinions? How many opportunities have you ignored because you were more afraid of embarrassment than failure? Because here's the irony. Most people are so busy worrying about their own lives. They aren't thinking about yours nearly as much as you imagine. And even if they are, their opinions don't pay your bills. They don't build your future. They don't determine your potential. Only your actions do. So if your goal is to remain exactly where you are, keep taking every comment personally. But if your goal is to grow, learn from valuable feedback, ignore meaningless noise, and never hand strangers the power to decide what's possible for your life. Number 4, follow the masses. If your goal is to never become rich, do what everyone else is doing. Think like everyone else. Spend like everyone else. Believe what everyone else believes. And never question whether the crowd is actually heading in the right direction. Because the truth is, average results usually come from average thinking. And average thinking often comes from one place: the crowd. As human beings, we're naturally wired to fit in. Thousands of years ago, belonging to the group increased your chances of survival. Being rejected by the tribe could mean death. So our brains evolved to seek acceptance, to avoid standing out, to follow what everyone else is doing. That instinct may have helped our ancestors survive. But in today's world, it can quietly prevent us from succeeding. Think about it. When everyone is buying the newest phone they can't afford, the pressure is to buy one too. When everyone is taking on debt to impress people they barely know, the pressure is to keep up. When everyone is chasing trends instead of building skills, the pressure is to do the same. It's easy to assume that if everyone is doing something, it must be the right thing. But history tells us a very different story. At one point, almost everyone believed the internet was just a passing trend. Almost everyone laughed at the idea of buying books online. Almost everyone doubted that electric cars could compete with traditional vehicles. The majority has been wrong countless times throughout history. That's because the crowd usually reacts to what's happening today. Successful people often prepare for what's coming tomorrow. This doesn't mean you should automatically do the opposite of everyone else. Following the crowd isn't always wrong. If the crowd is running away from a burning building, you should probably run too. But when it comes to building wealth, making career decisions, or creating your future. Blindly following the majority can be incredibly expensive. Here's why. The crowd tends to value comfort over growth, immediate pleasure over long-term rewards, certainty over possibility. And that's understandable. Growth is uncomfortable. Investing feels risky. Starting something new is scary. Learning a new skill takes time. Building a business comes with uncertainty. Most people naturally avoid those things. But those uncomfortable decisions are often the very ones that create extraordinary opportunities. Imagine you're standing at a busy train station. 99% of the people are boarding one train because everyone else is. Only a handful stop to ask, is this actually the train that's taking me where I want to go? That's how many people live their lives. They choose careers because everyone else did. They spend money because society expects them to. They define success based on someone else's standards. And years later, they wake up wondering why they ended up somewhere they never intended to be. Wealth isn't just about earning more money. It's about making independent decisions, thinking critically, questioning assumptions, having the courage to pause and ask, is this the life I genuinely want? Or am I simply following the script everyone else is following? Some of the most successful people in the world didn't succeed because they were the smartest person in the room. They succeeded because they were willing to think differently, to challenge conventional wisdom, to make decisions that looked strange at the time but made perfect sense years later. That doesn't mean every unconventional idea will succeed. Far from it. But you'll never discover extraordinary opportunities if you're only willing to make ordinary decisions. So the next time you find yourself doing something simply because everyone else is doing it, stop. Ask yourself one question. Am I making this decision because it's right for me? Or because it's popular? That single question could save you years of regret. Because if your goal is to stay exactly where everyone else is, then keep following the masses. But if your goal is to build a life that's anything but average, you may have to get comfortable walking a different path. Number 5. Make excuses. If you truly want to make sure you never become rich, become an expert at making excuses. Blame the economy. Blame your boss. Blame your parents. Blame your education. Blame your country. Blame your age. Blame your lack of connections. Blame your circumstances. Just make sure that every time life doesn't go your way, someone or something else is responsible. Because excuses are incredibly comforting. They protect your ego. They give you a reason why things aren't working. And perhaps worst of all, they remove the pressure to change. Think about it. If you believe your life is entirely someone else's fault, why would you ever try to improve it? After all, if someone else created the problem, then someone else has to solve it. That's the trap. Excuses don't just explain your situation. They convince you that you're powerless to change it. And the moment you believe you're powerless, you've already lost. Now, let's be clear. Life isn't fair. Some people genuinely start with more advantages than others. Some are born into wealth. Others grow up in poverty. Some have access to great schools. Others don't. Some are surrounded by mentors. Others have to figure everything out on their own. These differences are real. Pretending they don't exist helps no one. But here's something equally true. You cannot control where you start. You can only control where you choose to go from here. The most successful people understand this distinction. They spend very little time asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, they ask, "What can I do next?" That single shift in thinking changes everything. Because progress begins the moment responsibility begins. Imagine two people lose their jobs on the same day. The first spends the next 6 months complaining about how unfair life is. The second spends those same 6 months learning a new skill, networking, applying for opportunities, or even starting a side business. Both experienced the same setback, but only one took ownership of what happened next. Years later, their lives look completely different. Not because one had fewer problems, but because one spent more time finding solutions than finding excuses. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every excuse has a hidden cost. When you say, "I don't have enough time," what you're often saying is, "I'm not willing to make it a priority." When you say, "I'm too old," there are people older than you building successful businesses. When you say, "I'm too young," there are teenagers creating companies worth millions. When you say, "I don't have enough money," history is filled with entrepreneurs who started with almost nothing but determination and resourcefulness. Again, this doesn't mean success is guaranteed. It isn't. But excuses guarantee something else. They guarantee that nothing changes. One of the biggest differences between successful people and unsuccessful people isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's ownership. Successful people ask, asterisk, what could I have done differently? Asterisk, even when circumstances weren't entirely their fault. Why? Because taking responsibility gives them power. The moment you own the problem, you also own the possibility of solving it. That's why responsibility is so empowering. It shifts your focus away from what's outside your control and back to what you can actually influence. Your habits, your mindset, your skills, your decisions, your effort. Those are things no one can take away from you. So here's a question worth asking yourself. What's the excuse you've been repeating for months, or maybe even years? And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped repeating it and started replacing it with action? Because excuses may protect your pride today, but they often steal your future tomorrow. If you want to stay exactly where you are, keep making excuses. But if you want your life to change, there comes a point where you have to stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what's my next move? Because that question has built far more successful lives than excuses ever have. Number 6, be scared to be yourself. If you want to make sure you never become rich, spend your life trying to fit in. Hide your ideas. Silence your opinions. Play it safe. Blend into the crowd. And whatever you do, don't let people see who you really are. Because the easiest way to become invisible is to become just like everyone else. From the time we're children, we're taught the importance of fitting in. Don't stand out. Don't make too much noise. Don't be different. Don't embarrass yourself. Slowly, without even realizing it, many of us begin trading authenticity for acceptance. We stop saying what we really think. We stop pursuing what genuinely excites us. We start making decisions based on what other people expect instead of what we actually want. And while fitting in may earn you approval, it rarely leads to extraordinary success. Think about the people who have made the biggest impact on the world. They weren't remembered because they blended in. They were remembered because they were different. They challenged ideas. They questioned traditions. They built things people said would never work. They embraced who they were, even when it wasn't popular. That's what made them unforgettable. Now, this doesn't mean being different simply for the sake of being different. Being unique without creating value isn't enough. The point is this. Your greatest advantage is that no one else sees the world exactly the way you do. No one has your experiences, your perspective, your personality, your story. Those things can't be copied, but they can be hidden. And many people spend their entire lives hiding them. Imagine an artist who paints incredible masterpieces, but never shows them to anyone because they're afraid someone might criticize them. Or an entrepreneur with a brilliant business idea who never launches because they're worried people will laugh. Or someone with valuable knowledge who never shares it because they think, who am I to teach anyone? The world never benefits from what they could have contributed, not because they lack talent, but because fear convinced them to stay invisible. One of the biggest obstacles to success isn't a lack of ability. It's a lack of self-belief. It's constantly comparing yourself to everyone else, scrolling through social media and thinking, they're smarter than me. They're more talented than me. They're more qualified than me. What we often forget is that we're comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. We see their success. We don't see their failures. We see their confidence. We don't see the years of self-doubt they fought through. Comparison is a dangerous habit because it shifts your focus away from your own journey. Instead of asking, how can I become the best version of myself? You start asking, how can I become more like someone else? And in trying to become someone else, you often lose the very thing that made you valuable in the first place. Here's something many successful people eventually discover. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. Whether you're building a business, creating content, leading a team, or building a personal brand, people are drawn to those who are genuine, to those who speak with conviction, to those who aren't pretending to be someone they're not. Authenticity builds trust, and trust creates opportunity. So ask yourself this. How many opportunities have you missed because you were afraid of standing out? How many ideas have you kept to yourself because you were worried about what people might think? How many times have you chosen comfort over authenticity? Because every time you hide who you are, you also hide the value only you can bring. If you truly want to stay average, keep seeking everyone's approval. Keep pretending. Keep shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. But if you want to build a meaningful life, There comes a point where you have to stop asking, will people accept me? And start asking, am I being honest about who I am? Because the people who create extraordinary lives aren't usually the ones who fit into the world. They're the ones who have the courage to show the world exactly who they are. And finally, number 7, fight battles that aren't very important to you. If you want to make sure you never become rich, spend your time fighting every battle that comes your way. Argue with strangers on the internet. Try to prove everyone wrong. Get offended by every comment. Hold grudges. Win every debate. Defend your ego at all costs. Because while you're busy winning arguments, someone else is quietly building the life you say you want. One of the most valuable resources you'll ever possess isn't money. It isn't intelligence. It isn't even talent. It's your time. And right behind your time is your energy. The unfortunate reality is that many people spend both on things that don't move their lives forward. Think about how easy it is today to be pulled into conflict. A comment on social media, a political debate, an argument at work, family drama, office gossip, a disagreement that, 5 years from now, you probably won't even remember. Yet people sacrifice hours, days, sometimes even years, trying to win battles that were never worth fighting. Here's something successful people understand. Not every battle deserves your attention. In fact, some battles cost more to win than they do to walk away from. Imagine a professional athlete preparing for the biggest competition of their life. Would they spend the night before the event arguing with strangers online? Probably not. Why? Because they understand something many people forget. Focus is a competitive advantage. Every minute spent on unnecessary conflict is a minute not spent improving your skills, learning something new, building relationships, creating opportunities, or investing in your future. Life is full of distractions disguised as emergencies. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels important. But very little actually is. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is this: will this matter a year from now? If the answer is no, maybe it doesn't deserve an hour of your attention today. That doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. Some battles absolutely need to be fought. Standing up for your values, protecting your family, defending what's right, addressing serious problems. Those are meaningful battles. But there's a difference between fighting for your principles and fighting simply because your pride has been challenged. Too often, we confuse the two. We argue not because it improves our lives, but because we want the satisfaction of being right. The problem is, being right doesn't always make you successful. Sometimes, the smartest decision is to let someone else have the last word while you continue building your future. There's an old saying that goes, asterisk, never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig enjoys it. Asterisk. The lesson isn't about avoiding people. It's about protecting your focus. Because every unnecessary conflict comes with an opportunity cost. While you're consumed by anger, you're not creating. While you're trying to prove someone wrong, you're not improving yourself. While you're replaying an argument in your mind, you're not thinking about your next opportunity. We often underestimate how expensive distraction can be. The wealthiest people in the world don't just manage their money well. They manage their attention. They know that attention is finite. Once it's spent, you can never get it back. So they become incredibly selective about what deserves their emotional investment. And maybe that's a lesson all of us can learn. Not everything requires a response. Not every criticism deserves an explanation. Not every disagreement requires a winner. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Because your future doesn't depend on winning every argument. It depends on directing your energy toward the things that actually matter. So if your goal is to stay exactly where you are, keep fighting battles that don't deserve your attention. But if your goal is to build a meaningful, successful, and prosperous life, choose your battles carefully. Some victories feel good for a moment. Others change the course of your entire life. Learn the difference. As you've probably noticed, none of these 7 habits were really about money. They were about something much deeper. The people you listen to, the information you consume, the opinions you allow to control you, the crowds you follow, the excuses you make, the person you're afraid to become, and the battles you choose to fight. Because wealth doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your mind. Long before someone builds financial freedom, they build better habits, better thinking, better decisions. And while avoiding these 7 habits won't guarantee that you'll become rich, holding on to them almost guarantees that you'll never reach your full potential. So before you ask, how can I make more money? Maybe ask yourself a different question. Which of these habits do I need to let go of? Because sometimes, the biggest breakthrough in your life doesn't come from adding something new. It comes from removing the very thing that's been quietly holding you back all along. If you found this valuable, consider sharing it with someone who needs to watch it. And if you enjoy content that explores success, wealth, psychology, and the ideas that shape extraordinary lives, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. Until next time, thank you for watching.